The Gospel according to John, chapter 19, begins this way. So then Pilate took Jesus and scourged him, and the soldiers twisted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And they put on him a purple robe. Then they said, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him with their hands. Pilate then went out again and said to them, "Behold, I am bringing him out to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him." Then Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said to them, "Behold the man." Therefore, when the chief priests and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said to them, "You take him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." The leaders answered him, "We have a law, and according to our law he ought to die because he made himself the Son of God." Therefore, when Pilate heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went in again to the praetorium and said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Are you not speaking to me? Do you not know that I have the power to crucify you and power to release you?" Jesus answered, "You have no power at all against me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who delivered me to you has the greater sin." From then on, Pilate sought to release him, but the leaders cried out, saying, "If you let this man go, you are not Caesar's friend. Whoever makes himself a king speaks against Caesar." When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus out and sat down in the judgment seat in a place that is called the Pavement, but in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the preparation day of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he said to the Jews, "Behold your king." But they cried out, "Away with him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Then he delivered him to them to be crucified. Then they took Jesus and led him away.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make the wretch his treasure. How great the pain of sin was, the Father turns his face away, as winds which mar the chosen one, bring many sons to glory.
We have pointed out from time to time that the events of the New Testament, the Jesus era of God's Word, if you like, and are reflections of events in the Old Testament, the pre-Jesus era. In other words, what happened when Jesus came along was set up by things that happened before his coming. You probably heard Jesus referred to as the second Adam. Adam was created by God's hand. Jesus was born by God's Spirit. When God commanded Abraham to sacrifice his son, that set up the sacrifice by God of Jesus. You could also say that Jesus was also the second David. Each of them led his people to victory over vicious, violent enemies, and each of them stood for unification of their people. After defeating the challenges to his rule, beating back enemies from the outside and uniting the kingdoms of Judah and Israel, David praised God in a song of victory. "In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears." Jesus spent his ministry on earth dealing with challenges to his rule, fighting the biggest enemy of them all, and unifying God's people in the process. But while Jesus talked of the glory of God, he also cried out from the cross, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me?" David sang metaphorically about earthquakes sent by an angry God. When Jesus was crucified, there was nothing metaphorical about the earthquakes. The earth quaked, and the rocks were split, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. David sang of God's mercy. With the merciful, You will show yourself merciful. With a blameless man, you will show yourself blameless. With the pure, you will show yourself pure. The thief who hung beside Jesus on the cross saw that Jesus was pure and blameless, while he knew he was anything but. And yet Jesus showed himself merciful, telling that thief, "Today you will be with me in paradise." David sang, "I will give thanks to you among the Gentiles and sing praises to your name." Jesus didn't need to witness to the Gentiles. They did it themselves. When the centurion and those who were with him saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, "Truly, this was the Son of God." David sang praises to the name of God. "The Lord lives. Blessed be my rock. Let God be exalted, the rock of my salvation. It is God who avenges me and subdues the peoples under me. He delivers me from my enemies. You also lift me up above those who rise against me." Jesus forgave his enemies and committed his spirit into his Father's hands. And then God lifted Jesus up above those who rose against him. David sang of military victories and crushing those who were against him. Jesus yielded his spirit, or gave up the ghost. No one could be accused of killing him. He gave it up willingly. No one killed him. And yet, didn't we all? David unified the kingdoms of Judah and Israel under his rule. Jesus' ongoing mission, even to this day, is to unify all of God's people. That is us and anybody else. As the Apostle Paul put it, there is neither Jew nor Greek. David's victory was obvious to all. The glory was manifest. On the cross, a crown of thorns on his head, wounds in his hands, feet, and side, people wagging their fingers and calling on him to get down off the cross if he was the Son of God. Jesus looked like there was no victory at all, no glory to be seen. He was done for, or so the religious leaders hoped. Ecce homo, Pilate declared. Behold the man. But soon God would say, now behold me.
Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice, called out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there, until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished.
The wait is over now. Jesus, Lion of Judah, Lamb of God, has arrived, and by his stripes we are healed. The pain is excruciating, it's heavy. The window for God's presence and the oneness he has only ever known has been shut. His body is broken. His heart is breaking. If he had been deafened by any of the blows of the soldiers, if the scourging, the whip laced with shards of iron and bone, had cut his eyes and taken his sight, the experience of the cross could have been less painful for him. Not having to hear, to see all of the pain surrounding him. Abba, mercy for your Savior. Mercy for our Savior, your Son. Please. This love poured out is for our reconciliation and way back home. So let the volume of the noise in this scene become very clear for you from the Gospel of Matthew. Two rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God. In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. He is drowning in all the pain. The love of God is being suffocated this darkest of all days of all history. The cacophony of negativity. What is it that he poses? Such a threat to everyone. Here hangs the love of God. It is immeasurable. It cannot be touched. It cannot be reduced. Unshakable. It cannot be changed. It is eternal. It is through all things. It is immovable. It cannot be broken. It cannot be changed. In brief moments, this love, who is Christ, scans the area surrounding him. As he hangs there stuck to the symbol of shame with his arms wide open, and he lifts his voice up to Abba. And the sin of it all, the pain is so thick, it feels like drowning. And he searches at the crowd for a glimpse of home, of love. And there are little signs of consolation peering through the hatred. His mom, his friends. And imagining within the lines now that in a sudden lull to the shouts and cries, he would see someone, lock eyes with them. He would feel their presence inspiring. Perhaps it was you. It was me. Even as we imagine him there now and seeing him there, believing for the first time, his inspiration, for God so loved the world. Then for another breath, he'd have to push up on the nails embedded in his feet, pull up on the nails by his wrists for momentary relief from the panic of suffocation. Then a voice beside him streams out from the shadows, like a morning bird arising in song just before the day breaks. One of the criminals, noted for unloading insults at him along with the rest of the crowd, had changed his tune. As Luke records, something had happened. What could it have been? It's like he woke up out of a trance, or that he awakened from something of a distraction that he was caught up in. The other one hanging there didn't, but he did. What could it have been? Something broke through and transformed him. What did he notice? What did he hear? Was it the obvious loving connection he held with his mom and those few of his friends who were there? Or perhaps it was a moment of clarity, like seeing the numb-witted soldiers oblivious, burping, laughing obnoxiously, unknowing, as they cast lots for the clothes they stripped our Jesus of. Then looking over at him, this man hanging there beside him, as the criminal observed, Jesus' blood-soaked in streams that tears had left through the blood down his face, and what few words his broken heart and body had energy left for. And yet, the words, Father, forgive them, he heard him say. He recognized the difference. And the difference is so real when your eyes are open to it. And the choice is for us just the same, life-changing and clear. May we see the difference, both as the conflict can arise within us and as it can become clear in the world surrounding. And may we snap out of the common distraction that seeks to keep the world afraid and in exile. The choice we are invited into, if we are willing, is life, and life more abundant, and the blessing, paradise. This is the gospel, and may we be sensitive to the difference and choose to fall into the loving grace of our God today. This day, may we choose life and blessing. See him, attuned to his voice, whispering love and invitation beyond all the struggle and confusion. Come unto me, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom.
From the Gospel of John, chapter 19, verse 25 to 27. Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. One of the most haunting stories my grandfather shared with me about World War II was about soldiers, many of them very young men, dying on the battlefield. He said that as they lied there suffering and agony from their wounds, they could be heard calling out across the fields. Some would call out to God to help them and be with them. Others would shout in anger at God. They would even curse God in their despair. But more often than not, in their last moments, the person these young men would cry out for was their mother. Here we see Jesus calling out to his mother from the cross. His mother is said to be standing there, witnessing this devastating event. The prophet Simeon had told her that one day a sword would pierce her soul, and that day had come. She felt the pain as her son, and now Lord, suffered on the cross before her very eyes. I have often wondered why Jesus had to endure so much hardship and such a tragic end to his life. One of my friends gave me an answer that has always stuck with me. She said that in Jesus' life, he was poor, he was betrayed by his friends, he was persecuted, he died young, being tortured and brutally killed. But because of what Jesus went through, no human can say that Jesus doesn't understand their troubles. No one can say that Jesus doesn't get it, because Jesus gets it. He gets all of it. It has been said that the miracle of Jesus was not only his divinity, but also his humanity. It takes guts to be human, the way Jesus was human. And the same could be said of Mary. It took guts or tremendous courage to be Jesus' mother, to follow her calling, to not turn away, to give birth to this baby, this God in human form. Mary, in her humanity, understands. She knows what it is like to be a young, unwed mother without even a home to go to, and to raise a child who is different, special, a child whose life she had very little control over. She had to let him face his own destiny, witness his death, and endure his loss. Mary has been through it all. She understands suffering for the sake of one's child. Mary is the mother of all mothers. And when Jesus is suffering on the cross, he can't help but call out to his mother. She has been there throughout most of his life. She was the first to believe in him and the one to know his purpose. He needs her comfort in these final hours and also hates for her to see him this way. But she stays with him throughout the entire ordeal. He also can't help but worry about who will take care of her when he is gone. Most of us worry about what will happen to those we love if we were no longer here, and Jesus felt the same. When Jesus sees John, his beloved young disciple, he gives him instructions from the cross that Mary will now be a mother to him, and he is to care for her. John understands this and takes Mary home to live with him. Over 2,000 years later, and we as humans can feel the intense pain of this scene. The Bible not only shares details of the violence that occurred, but also the intricacies and complications of the relationships still taking place in these last moments. Some things change as the world changes, but some things forever remain the same, like the need we all have to be cared for, the bond that exists between a parent and child, and what it means to be part of a family, either one you were born into or one that is created. God understands this. God is intensely concerned with relationships, those we have with him and those we have with each other. And the story of Jesus and Mary, this mother and son whose lives still influence so greatly to this day, who lived out God's purpose for their lives even in the face of such adversity. When God came into the world, he knew he would need a mother to care for him. And when he left the world, he knew he needed to make sure someone would care for her and those he left behind. God hears our cries. God understands.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make us his treasure. How great the kingdom still has. The Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one, bring many sons to glory. As wounds which mar the chosen one, bring many sons to glory.
When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The darkness is come. It is here, settling over all of those in attendance, all of those watching and waiting and wondering. The darkness is like a living thing leeching its way across the land, coating everything in its path, whispering over fields, around buildings, into window cracks and through doorways. We are helpless to stop it. No matter where we go, we cannot flee from its presence. We cannot hide from its relentless pursuit. The darkness inevitably marches on and on and on, and we yearn for a light, for hope, for a glimmer, a direction. Yet from the middle of the darkness we hear, my God, why have you forsaken me?" The darkness deepens, and we echo in response, my God, why have you forsaken us?" The words ring out and settle deep into our darkened hearts, our spirits dampened, our hope questioning, doubt breaking through. Our bodies wince as he cries out, gasp in response as his last breath shudders out of his impaled body. Forsaken, oh God, forsaken. We are haunted by the truth of the words. They burrow into our souls. We watch in snatches of new light a human broken body, freed from nails, collapsing into waiting hands, falling from a rough cross silhouetted against the sputtering light, returning to the world. Forsaken whispers into our beings as we reach to wrap this man, this hope, this broken light. We follow as he is lifted, carried on bold shoulders, struggling to see through the darkness that belies the light flooding back into the world. We stumble on the rocks lining this final journey, blindness snatching our eyes through tears. My God, why? We whisper as his body is laid onto its final rocky bed. We drop to the ground outside the tomb, regret, guilt, shame, pain, the horror of the last hours settling into our spirits. My God, we are forsaken. The tomb door rolls. We have failed. We are lost. We are alone. We bow, knees scraping on the ground, wails frozen in our throats, humbled into deep silence. We kneel, broken, forsaken. The darkness descended clings to us like shrouds, pulling us down and down and down. Jesus is dead. He is forsaken. Our King is lost. We are forsaken.